The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty courtyard of Aisha's small home. A gentle breeze, warm and laden with the scent of jasmine from a neighbor's vine, rustled the leaves of the neem tree by her window. Inside, Aisha sat on a worn rug, meticulously polishing a brass lamp, its surface reflecting the muted light of the room. Her movements were slow, deliberate, each stroke a meditation. It had been 5 years since the death of her husband, Karim, a kind and quiet man who had worked the land with calloused hands and a gentle spirit. His passing had left a silence in their home that no amount of prayer or activity could entirely fill. Aisha was known in the village of Rahim Yar Khan for her quiet grace and resilient spirit. Her eyes, the color of rich earth, held a depth of sorrow, yet also a steadfast strength. She was in her early 30s, her face unlined but for the faintest etchings around her eyes that spoke of unspoken burdens. The biggest burden, the one that had weighed heavily on her and, indeed, upon Karim before his passing, was her inability to conceive. In their community, a woman's worth was often measured by the children she bore. Without an heir, the legacy of a family, particularly a man's, was seen as incomplete. After Karim's death, the whispers had begun, soft at first, then growing louder, like the rising wind before a storm. The elders of the village, particularly a stern and unyielding woman named Bibi Gul, had held meetings. They spoke of tradition, of divine will, and of the need for families to continue. Aisha, alone and vulnerable, had found herself at the center of a judgment she could not escape. The village council, swayed by Bibi Gul's fervent belief in ancient customs, had decreed a harsh punishment. 100 lashes, they said, for failing to fulfill her duty as a wife, for being barren. The memory of that day still brought a cold tremor to Aisha's heart. The public square, the hushed crowd, the burning shame that had threatened to consume her. Each stroke of the whip had been a testament to her perceived failure, a branding of her infertility upon her very flesh. She had borne the pain with a stoic silence, her gaze fixed on the distant hills, finding solace in their unchanging presence. The physical wounds had healed, leaving faint, silvery scars on her back, but the emotional scars ran deeper, etching themselves onto her soul. Since then, she had lived a solitary life, rarely venturing beyond her small garden, her interactions with others minimal. The villagers, while not overtly hostile, kept their distance, a silent acknowledgement of her marked status. The scent of roasting cumin wafted from a nearby kitchen, a familiar aroma that usually brought a sense of comfort, but today it only deepened her solitude. She finished with the lamp, setting it carefully on a small wooden table. Her gaze drifted to a faded photograph of Karim, his smile gentle and reassuring. If only, she whispered to the air, if only things had been different. A few weeks later, a new family arrived in Rahim Yar Khan. They were from a distant village, having moved for work opportunities in the burgeoning textile industry nearby. The head of the family was a man named Omar, a widower with 3 young children. His arrival, though initially unremarkable, slowly began to stir the quiet rhythm of Aisha's life. Omar was a man of medium height, with a strong, kind face and eyes that held a hint of sadness, much like Aisha's own. His beard was neatly trimmed, and his hands, like Karim's, bore the marks of honest labor. He worked as a carpenter, and his reputation for skilled craftsmanship quickly spread. His 3 children, a spirited girl named Zara, who was 8, a thoughtful boy named Bilal, who was 6, and the youngest, a mischievous toddler named Fatima, were a lively, boisterous trio who brought a new kind of energy to the quiet lanes. Aisha first encountered Omar and his children at the village well, a place where women gathered daily to draw water and exchange news. She usually went at quieter times to avoid the stairs, but that day, her pitcher had been empty. As she approached, she saw Omar struggling with a heavy bucket while simultaneously trying to manage Fatima, who was attempting to splash in a puddle. Zara and Bilal were excitedly pointing at a flock of pigeons. Omar looked up, his brow furrowed with a mixture of exasperation and affection. His eyes met Aisha's, and for a fleeting moment, she saw not judgment, but a shared weariness, a mutual understanding of life's burdens. He offered a small, polite nod, and Aisha, surprised by the absence of condemnation in his gaze, returned it. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more frequently. Omar often passed Aisha's house on his way to the market, his children sometimes trailing behind him like a joyful procession. Zara, the eldest, was particularly observant. She noticed Aisha's carefully tended garden, her vibrant roses and fragrant jasmine. One day, emboldened by curiosity, she ventured closer to Aisha's gate. "Auntie," Zara called out shyly, her voice like a tiny bell. "Your flowers are very beautiful." Aisha, who was pruning a rose bush, looked up, a rare, soft smile touching her lips. Thank you, little one, she replied, her voice a gentle murmur. Would you like one? Zara's eyes lit up, and she nodded eagerly. Aisha carefully cut a perfect, crimson rose and handed it to the girl. From that day on, Zara became a frequent visitor, sometimes bringing her siblings. They would sit quietly as Aisha tended her garden, or listen to her soft stories about the birds and the sky. Aisha, who had thought her heart had closed itself off, found a tender space opening for these children. Their innocent laughter and unburdened presence were like drops of cool water on parched earth. Omar noticed the change in Aisha. He saw the way her eyes, once shadowed, now held a glint of warmth when his children were near. He saw the care she took in preparing small treats for them, the patience with which she answered their endless questions. He, too, felt a quiet respect for her. He had heard the whispers, the harsh judgment of the village. But he saw a woman of immense inner strength, a woman who carried her sorrow with dignity. One evening, after putting his children to bed, Omar found himself sitting on his porch, the cool night air a welcome balm. He thought of Aisha, of her quiet grace, of the way her hands moved with such gentle purpose. He knew the story of her public shaming, the injustice of it. He, a father who had lost his wife and now raised 3 children alone, understood the weight of expectation, the burden of being judged. A thought, tentative at first, then growing in clarity, began to form in his mind. He needed a partner, a mother for his children. Not just a woman to manage his household, but a companion, a kind heart. And Aisha, with her quiet strength and gentle nature, seemed to possess all the qualities he sought. He knew the village would talk, but Omar had always been a man who followed his own conscience. The next morning, after much deliberation, Omar walked to Aisha's house. His heart beat a little faster than usual, a mix of hope and trepidation. He found Aisha in her courtyard, hanging freshly washed clothes on a line. The sun caught the intricate embroidery on her simple dress, making it shimmer. Aisha, he began, his voice calm but firm. She turned, her expression one of mild surprise. I have come to speak with you about something important. Aisha motioned for him to sit on the small wooden bench beneath the neem tree. She offered him a glass of water, her movements graceful. Omar took a sip, gathering his thoughts. Aisha, he said, setting the glass down. I am a man with 3 children, and no wife to care for them, or to share my life. I have watched you with Zara, Bilal, and Fatima. I have seen your kindness, your patience, your gentle heart. He paused, looking directly into her eyes. I know of the hardships you have faced, the injustice you have endured. But I see beyond what others have said. I see a good woman, a strong woman. Aisha listened, her expression unreadable. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a mixture of fear and a fragile, unexpected hope. No one had spoken to her with such directness, such respect, in years. Aisha, Omar continued, his voice softening, I would like to ask you to be my wife. To be a mother to my children, and a companion to me. I do not ask for children of your own body, for I have 3 already. I ask only for your heart, your kindness, and your companionship. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, shattering the long-held silence of her life. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sadness, but of an overwhelming, unexpected relief. For so long, she had been defined by her inability to bear children. Now, here was a man who saw her for who she was, not for what she lacked. A man who offered her not just a home, but a family, a purpose beyond her solitary existence. Omar, she managed to whisper, her voice thick with emotion. Are you truly sure? The village, they will talk. Omar smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. Let them talk, Aisha. My children need a mother, and I need a wife. I believe you are that woman. Aisha nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Yes, Omar, she said, her voice growing stronger. Yes, I will marry you. The news of their impending marriage rippled through Rahim Yar Khan like a small, curious wave. Many were surprised, some whispered behind cupped hands, and Bibi Gul openly expressed her disapproval. A barren woman, she scoffed to her neighbors, what good can come of such a union? But Omar, true to his word, paid no mind. He held his head high, his purpose clear. The children, especially Zara, were overjoyed. They had grown fond of Aisha, and the idea of her becoming their mother filled them with innocent delight. The wedding was a simple affair, held in Omar's small home. There were no grand celebrations, no elaborate feasts, but the atmosphere was filled with a quiet joy and a profound sense of rightness. Aisha, dressed in a simple green shalwar kameez, her head covered with a delicate dupatta, glowed with an inner peace she hadn't felt in years. Omar stood beside her, his hand gently touching her arm, a silent promise of support. Life with Omar and his children was a revelation for Aisha. The house, once filled only with the echoes of a lonely heart, now vibrated with the joyful chaos of a family. Zara, Bilal, and Fatima embraced her with an openness that mended the broken pieces of her soul. She learned to braid Zara's long hair, to help Bilal with his sums, and to soothe Fatima's cries. She cooked meals, tended the garden with renewed purpose, and found joy in the mundane rhythms of family life. Omar was a kind and respectful husband. He valued her opinions, sought her counsel, and treated her with a tenderness that healed the wounds of the past. In his eyes, she was not the barren woman, but Aisha, his beloved wife, the mother of his children. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Aisha sat on the porch swing with Fatima nestled in her lap. Zara and Bilal playing nearby. Omar came and sat beside her, his arm gently around her shoulders. Aisha, he said, his voice soft, you have brought so much light into our lives. You are a true mother to my children, and a wonderful wife. Aisha leaned her head against his shoulder, a profound sense of contentment washing over her. The scars on her back, once a symbol of shame, now felt like distant memories. She had found her purpose, not in conceiving life from her own body, but in nurturing the lives already given, in loving and being loved. You have given me a family, Omar, she replied, her voice thick with gratitude. You have given me a home, and a heart full of love. I am truly blessed. The gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine, mingling with the sweet aroma of cooking rice from inside the house. The laughter of the children drifted on the air, a melody of happiness. Aisha looked at Zara and Bilal, then down at Fatima, who was now fast asleep in her arms. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. Her journey had been long and difficult, marked by hardship and pain. But now, surrounded by the warmth of her new family, Aisha knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that she had finally found her true place in the world. She was not barren, she was a mother, a wife, and a woman whole, embraced by love.